Houston, Texas, a city of bright lights, opportunity, and countless stories that unfold in the dead of night. Among them, the story of a young woman with ambitions, with a family that loved her, with a life that should have stretched far beyond her 24 years. April 15th, 2022. It was supposed to be just another night. Felicia Johnson had dreams. Dreams of building a future, finding stability, and making her mark. She had just celebrated her birthday. She was young, full of life, full of hope, but by the time the sun rose the next morning, she was nowhere to be found. Her last known whereabouts? A nightclub in the 10,300 block of West Little York Road. She had gone there looking for a job. She was turned away, and that's where things took a turn. She called an Uber, but it never picked her up. Instead, someone else offered her a ride. Someone she didn't know. Someone who would change the course of her life forever. From that moment on, Felicia Johnson vanished. No calls, no texts, no social media updates, no credit card activity, just silence. It wasn't until later that night that her father, Kevin Johnson, realized something was wrong. Felicia wasn't answering her phone. She wasn't checking in. Hours passed, then a day, then another, and then a discovery. A blood-stained cell phone, discarded near Highway 6 and Clay Road, the only trace of Felicia. As police began to investigate, a name surfaced. A man Felicia had allegedly been speaking to before she disappeared. A man who picked her up that night and took her to his apartment. A man who would soon be charged with her murder, even though her body was never found. Authorities say 28-year-old Chukwuebuka Nwobodo lured Felicia into his vehicle, took her to his apartment on South Richmond Avenue, and killed her before disposing of her personal belongings. And then, he vanished. A missing woman, a fugitive suspect, a family desperate for answers. This is the story of Felicia Johnson. Felicia Marie Johnson was more than a name on a missing persons poster. She was a daughter, a friend, a dreamer. A young woman searching for her place in the world. Born and raised in California, she had dreams of independence, of making a life for herself. And Houston seemed like the perfect place to start over. She had just turned 24, a milestone that should have been the beginning of new opportunities, new experiences. Her father, Kevin Johnson, described her as loving and kind-hearted, someone who saw the best in people, who believed in second chances. But beneath that optimism, Felicia was also struggling, like so many young women trying to find stability in an unforgiving world. She was just trying to figure things out. She wanted more for herself. She wasn't perfect, but she was my daughter, and she didn't deserve this. Felicia's journey led her to Houston, where opportunities seemed endless. A vibrant city with an active nightlife, a place where young people chase their ambitions. On April 15th, 2022, she was hoping for a fresh start. That night, she walked into CoverGirl's nightclub, hoping to find work. She was turned away. But instead of going home, she accepted a ride from a man she barely knew. She called an Uber, but when it took too long, a stranger offered her a ride instead. That decision, one made in just seconds, sealed her fate. Hours later, her phone was found in Bear Creek Pioneers Park, smashed, bloodstained, and Felicia was gone. April 15th, 2022. Felicia Johnson steps into CoverGirl's nightclub, hoping to land a job. But things don't go as planned. The club turns her away. Whatever hopes she had of making quick money that night were gone. It's late. She pulls out her phone and requests an Uber. She waits. Minutes pass. The car's taking too long. And then he appears. A man in the parking lot offers her a ride. That man was 28-year-old Chukwuebuka Nwobodo. Felicia hesitates. But it's late. She's alone. And he seems friendly enough. She climbs into the car. The door shuts. Surveillance footage captures a vehicle leaving the area. And then, silence. She had no idea she was being driven to her death. Hours after she disappeared, her phone was discovered here, smashed, covered in blood, discarded like trash. But Felicia? Felicia was nowhere to be found. She had vanished. For hours, Felicia's phone rang. No answer. Messages went unread. Calls straight to voicemail. And then her social media, silent. Her father, Kevin Johnson, thousands of miles away in California, felt something was wrong. Days passed. No calls. No texts. Nothing. Then came a call that made his heart drop. Her phone had been found, covered in blood. The discovery was made less than 5 miles from where Felicia was last seen. It was tossed aside like an afterthought, cracked and smeared with blood. But Felicia? Felicia was nowhere in sight. My daughter is missing. My daughter is out there somewhere, and I need the police to do everything they can to find her. Kevin Johnson wasn't going to wait for answers. He demanded them. He hired a private investigator, hoping for a lead. He went on national television, pleading for help. He begged the Houston Police Department to act fast. But time was slipping away, and with each passing day, the question remained, where was Felicia? As the days passed, investigators began to piece together the moments leading up to Felicia Johnson's disappearance. Through digital forensics, police uncovered a disturbing connection. Felicia had been communicating with a man named Chukwuebuka Nwobodo, a 28-year-old Houston resident who had been searching for something specific. He had reached out to Felicia online, offering her $500 for a private meeting, a seemingly easy transaction, but it was anything but routine. Investigators traced her final movements through phone records, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence. The digital trail led to one place, Nwobodo's apartment at 14,935 South Richmond Avenue. Felicia was last seen entering his vehicle, and based on location data from her phone, she never left his apartment alive. Authorities discovered that, just days after Felicia vanished, Nwobodo had purchased industrial-sized trash bags, gloves, and cleaning supplies. He made search queries on how to dispose of a body, and then his bank records showed something else, a ticket. He was preparing to leave. But what investigators would later uncover inside his apartment would be even more disturbing. Felicia's DNA was found on a bedsheet inside his car and in multiple locations within his home. It was undeniable. Felicia had been there, and she had never left. June 2022. After weeks of gathering evidence, Houston police issued a warrant for Chukwuebuka Nwobodo's arrest. They were ready to bring him in, but when officers arrived at his last known address, he was gone. Forensic teams entered the apartment, searching for clues. What they found told a story that was impossible to ignore. Blood, DNA, personal belongings, and a disturbing digital footprint. Nwobodo had erased his tracks. He had wiped his phone, cleared his bank accounts, and disappeared without a trace. Authorities declared him a fugitive, but despite an active murder warrant, months passed with no sign of him. The question remained, where had he gone? And even more chilling, where was Felicia's body? April 2023, 1 year. That's how long Felicia Johnson's family had waited for answers. 1 year of false leads, 1 year of silence, 1 year of not knowing. And then, on a quiet stretch of road deep in the Sam Houston National Forest, a highway worker stumbled upon something unthinkable: scattered human remains. Investigators moved quickly, sending the remains for forensic testing. And then came the confirmation no one wanted to hear. Felicia Johnson had finally been found, but not as her family had hoped. Her father, Kevin Johnson, had spent months searching, pleading for information, praying for a miracle. Instead, he was given the worst possible news. She didn't deserve this, he told reporters. She was a daughter, she was loved, she should be here today. Felicia's story had come to a tragic end, but justice was still nowhere in sight. Even as the search for Felicia ended, the fight for justice was just beginning. On the night of April 15, 2023, exactly 1 year after Felicia disappeared, her family and friends gathered in Houston. They spoke her name. They told her story. They demanded answers. We still don't have justice. This man is out there somewhere, and I won't stop until we find him. Felicia's case struck a nerve, not just in Houston, but nationwide. Advocates called for stronger protections for women, especially those vulnerable to exploitation. They called out a justice system that often fails victims before their cases even begin. Meanwhile, the man accused of Felicia's murder, Chukwuebuka Nwabodo, remained missing. The warrant for his arrest was issued. His face was shared across news stations and social media, but he had disappeared without a trace. We continue to ask for the public's help. If you have any information on Nwabodo's whereabouts, call Crime Stoppers. The frustration was growing. The pain was unbearable. But Felicia's family made one thing clear. They were not giving up. Felicia, I love you. I will never stop fighting for you. We're not done. More than a year has passed. More than a year without answers. And more than a year without justice. Felicia Johnson was murdered. Her body was discarded. And the man accused of killing her, Chukwuebuka Nwabodo, remains a fugitive. We are actively seeking any leads on Nwabodo's whereabouts. We urge the public to come forward. Someone knows where he is. Authorities believe Nwabodo may have fled the country. He could be anywhere, living under a new identity, staying with someone who is helping him hide, or worse, planning his next move. Despite active arrest warrants, there have been no confirmed sightings of Nwabodo, no financial transactions, no social media activity. It's as if he has vanished off the face of the earth. Somebody knows where this man is, somebody's helping him, and they need to be held accountable too. Felicia's case is not closed. The investigation is still ongoing, and her family is still waiting for justice. Felicia Johnson was loved. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman with dreams. But her life was taken, and her family is still waiting for justice. I just want justice for my baby. That's all I ask. Chukwuebuka Nwabodo is still out there. He has been on the run for over a year. Authorities believe he may have fled the country or gone into deep hiding. Someone, somewhere, knows where he is. Do you think law enforcement is doing enough to track him down? Should there be stronger efforts to find fugitives like Nwabodo? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more in-depth true crime investigations, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Together, we can help keep stories like Felicia's alive and push for justice.